Yo, it's Austin, and today I want to talk about Pokemon. You know, like the one that had all of the cultural impact and gave kids seizures and turned them into a bunch of devil-worshipping, evolution-supporting evil people. It's a good game.
It's hard to have gone the last 20 or so years without ever hearing about Pokemon, gamer or not. Even if it was for the purpose of dropping your kids off at the movie theater with their friends, only to roll out with their parents who you totally hate just to grab a drink. Ah, Pokemon, you would say, knowing that you can have an hour and a half without little baby Lee crawling up your back. But little did you know that little baby Lee was having the time of his fucking life, developing relationships with his Pokemon, raising them to be the best, and beating all of his friends in the playground. Ah, Pokemon, he would say, before quickly being ganged up on for being that kid that only has a level 100 Charizard.
Pokemon as a franchise is pretty neat, and I've played it probably as much as you have, so I'm not going to talk about it. No, instead we're going to talk about Pokemon-inspired games, Pokemon Ripoffs, clones, if you would.
Now, what is a Pokemon clone? Well, last time I did this, some people got a little spicy about my terminology, so allow me to explain. To me, a clone is a game that draws a lot, if not all of its inspiration from one source. Now, if we are talking about Pokemon, I define this by a few separate mechanics. Most notably, I'm referring to the concept of collectible monsters and the ability to have several at one time with direct control. By saying this, I'm eliminating games such as Digimon and Monster Rancher. While they may have the whole "look at our collectible monsters" thing going down, the games play way too differently for me to consider them a clone. And since it's been 20 years since the original, I thought it would be more interesting to talk about things from around the time period that were released over here. So that means that games such as Keitai Denju Telefang and Yokai Watch are ixnay here. While Telefang has a super interesting concept, we never formally got it. I hear Yokai Watch is pretty good though.
So yeah, let's do it.
Let's start with Jade Cocoon, story of the Tamamayu for the PlayStation 1. I hope you like bugs, because that's a majority of the monsters here! Interestingly enough though, Pokemon initially drew inspiration from bug collection and catching. Jade Cocoon was made by a little Japanese company named Genki, who was known primarily for their racing games. But you know, everyone had to get a slice of that rich Pokemon pie, so they jammed their foot in the doorway. But hey, they got Katsuya Kondo on character design, who worked on Kiki's delivery service, so that's pretty cool. The animated opening cutscene looks pretty damn promising. We start off on top of a watchtower, as our protagonist is playing his flute thing for some young girl.
The tune of a cocoon master is such an enchanting sound.
Oh, that's so romantic.
And as a Nagi woman, I will be your bride.
Whoa, okay, that's heavy. Do I not have a say in this? Thankfully, some little brat character comes up and breaks things up, so no cooties today. From there, we're taken to an overview of the main village, where I decide to head home and fall asleep for the night. Of course, crazy dreams start to ensue, people are telling me I'm not good enough, demons are gonna get me, yada yada. Some mysterious old man tells me that I'm worthless and proceeds to summon a dragon that slam dunks all over my face. I'm very confused. And this setup actually goes on for like 40 minutes. This includes waking up to a bunch of demons attacking your village named Cyrus, and the elders talking a bunch of shit.
Tradition states that a cocoon master shall suppress the demons.
Hey, like, I'm a cocoon master, I think. That's what Mabu said. Also, she's my wife now? Alright, I guess. Her and I are going together to save the world. From what, you ask?
The Oni Boo-Boo.
Excuse me?
The dust spread by the Oni Boo-Boo plunges all into sleep.
It's pretty cool that most of the dialogue is completely voice acted, even if it's pretty stiff at times. That and the art style are pretty on point. The pre-rendered backgrounds are super detailed, and the 3D models look pretty slick for the time. It's very easy to be drawn into this world visually. There are a ton of NPCs around the village of Cyrus, all with their own stories and side quests.
You look just like Ricketts when he was a young lad.
Is that fucking Master Roshi?
I'm sorry, his hands are skilled, but his tongue is not.
Oh, I should, probably talk about the Pokemon part now. A key difference between Jade Cocoon and Pokemon is that your Cocoon Master has his own stats and levels. The very first time you find a monster, you have to fight it yourself before you can capture it, and you do so by playing your flute and holding up a flashing fist to the sky. With the 20-second animation, that can potentially fail if your capture level is too low or you didn't weaken the monster enough. Yeah, it's kinda slow and tedious, but once you capture a monster, it becomes a firefly. You can hold a bunch at once, but you're not allowed to use them until you head back to your wife Mabu. Her purpose in the relationship is to take the fireflies you get and, I guess, hatch them out of cocoons? You can also, like, horribly brutalize the monster and sell its body for money, if you want. Finally, Mabu also has the power to merge your minions into a stronger or even weaker monster. You can't just fuse them willy-nilly, as some will lose stats and even levels depending on the combination. Once you get to combat, it's basically rock, paper, scissors, where you'll summon your minions and they each have their own elements that are strong and weak against other elements. It's pretty damn basic, but it makes sense for the smaller scale of Jade Cocoon. But you know what doesn't make sense? The fact that this game has tank controls. You know, the ones used in Resident Evil. Yeah, those. Sure, we get pre-rendered backgrounds and occasionally weird camera angles, but why fucking tank controls? Have you heard of Jade Cocoon before this? Because if not, I totally understand. I've never heard of an RPG using this control scheme before, and it makes things super awkward, especially when you're trying to avoid monsters on the map. And maybe it didn't catch on because, well, all of these monsters just kinda look like shit. Things got a little more cutesy for the sequel, but I think it might have been a bit too little too late. But speaking of looking like shit, let's talk about Demi-Kids. Demi-Kids, or as it's known in Japan, Shin Megami Tensei Devil Children, came out in 2002 and I had no clue. I suppose this was Atlus trying to cash out on the same craze, and yes, I know that Shin Megami had the collectible monster thing going on in the 80s, but you know, that didn't come out here and no one would watch a video called Megami Tensei Clones, so yeah. Looking at the cover, you'll notice that we got ourselves a choice of two games, the dark and light version. You might think that they're similar, but there's actually a significant amount of differences between the two. The light version has you controlling Jin, while the dark version has you in control of Akira. They start in different zones in the beginning and are based on the law and chaos paths from the Shin Megami Tensei franchise. Also, the dark version, the one that I played, is actually a significantly more difficult game with harder monsters and less drops, which I did not know until after the fact. Upon initial impressions of Demi-Kids, you might think, ugh, this looks like shit. Well, you're not wrong. I don't know what they did, but the sprite work in this collection just isn't up to par. I think it might be the coloring, but everything just looks kinda wrong. Also, the monster design that stems away from the classic Shin Megami Tensei monsters goes in a very generic direction. For example, look at Discount Lucario here. That's gonna make someone mad. Demi-Kids is actually a pretty neat game though. Like Jade Cocoon, you have to focus on fusing demons together, but in this game, almost every monster that you find doesn't even gain experience points. It's like catching a random monster from a Final Fantasy game. It's always going to be at that stat level. So instead, you have to find fodder monsters to fuse with them, and you do that by having a good old-fashioned conversation. Central to the Shin Megami Tensei series is the negotiation system that allows you to converse with the demons. No need to weaken anything, just pick a monster and strike up a conversation. Maybe you stare them down, act diplomatic, flirt a little bit, it's not a big deal. If they like you, they'll ask to join, or ask for money and then run away after you give them a 20. But this presents an interesting challenge because with the exception of your main partner, you're always switching out monsters, fusing them, and never really getting attached to anything. You level up your main squeeze by fusing him with sacrifices you convince to join you. It's kind of disgusting, actually. There's a big sense of difficulty that comes into play with the money, though, as resurrecting monsters cost a bunch. And you can't fuse them if they're dead, so you might end up with an inventory swarming with dead animals, kinda like Scrib's Closet. I love that in the dark version that your boss is basically fucking Lucifer. And when he makes his appearance, he's basically like a hot dad. Like, Gale spends a solid few hours telling you that you need to report to Lucifer, and when you do, it's like, oh, okay, we can make this work. Also, people are upset about Pokemon, but in Demi-Kids, you take orders directly from Lucifer himself. But yeah, this is okay, I guess. Hail Satan. I'd recommend the game on this alone, but Demi-Kids is absolutely worth a look, especially if you're a fan of the general Shin Megami Tensei world. Just be prepared for some pretty horrendous sprite art at times. And it's cool, because they managed to take inspiration from the Pokemon concept without shamelessly ripping it off like our next contender, Robopon. Oh god, oh no. Robopon, also known as Robot Pankatsu, released in Japan in 1998 and 2000 over here in the States. Like most people, Hudson were a big fan of money and decided to make their own Pokemon game, but with 3 versions instead of 2. But only the Sun version came out over here, so yeah. I mean, it even says Sun version, like there were supposed to be more versions, but I guess it bombed. Which makes sense within 20 seconds of playing. Orange. Orange everywhere. In the streets, in the houses, in the caves, in the schools. You can't escape it. It is just the grossest of oranges I've ever seen. Coupled with the dark blue it uses, which, mind you, are supposed to be complementing colors, it still stings the eye. Also, look at your character. Look familiar, like they didn't even fucking try. Hell, let's do it. So, you wake up and your parents are leaving to go on some trip. Suddenly, your batshit insane grandfather starts screaming outside about things, asking for help. So you go, and within a few minutes, he decides to give you your very own Robopon, as well as your own company. Yeah, he's just like, man, my business is in the shitter. I need an excuse to disappear. And when you talk to the receptionist, she's all like, Mr. President. Dude, I'm like 8 years old. Chill. This game's ugly, and the sprite in combat for your character looks goofy too, especially when put up against everyone else. Proportions aren't equal or evenly detailed. You pop up and then there's this shitty kid with a head twice the size of yours. Okay, so the premise is that you, little boy, wants to be the best Robopon master in the world. Actually, I'm not even sure about that, because you're also the president of a company, but it seems like the entire reasoning for anything you do is to counter the school bully Bisco. The game even starts with his gang terrorizing the town and you promptly dealing with it. He then challenges you to join a contest to become one of the Legend 7, the famous Robopon masters. But not yet, first you gotta get an item. That requires you to beat up all of your school teachers, which I was able to do by grinding up against this little girl here. Grinding up? By grinding against this little girl outside. Speaking of combat, it's, well, almost literally Pokemon. Each Robopon has unique No, they don't, because you actually just install parts on your Robopon to give them the moveset that you want. That's actually a pretty cool concept, but it's kind of pointless because you can just grind up and afford the stronger attacks. And strangely enough, the robots have the capability to evolve, which you do by feeding them energy. Some of these evolutions are just fucking weird though. For example, you get this little kawaii desu robot called Gidget, which evolves into an older woman called Betty. Both are magic users and pretty powerful. And then Betty can evolve further into Granny. Well, this is my main now. Fuck it. So once you find your principal underground for the item, which by the way, why? Then you can formally challenge Bisco to a fight. And, oh, well, I'm sorry, buddy. I didn't think you'd look like that from your other sprite. I'm sorry. Well, you beat him, and he goes and becomes a Legend 7 anyways, which you quickly knock him down by fighting him again, literally right after you fight him. Apparently, it's super easy to become a legend in the world of Robopon. If a little kid baby can do it within 1 day of him even getting a Robopon, what the fuck are all the adults doing? Are they even invested in the concept of Robopon, or is this one of those super meta things where the adults don't even care and just want their shitty kids away for a day or two? Now would be a good time to mention the fact that Robopon is just super sluggish. There's this weird delay to every single command you input, be it selecting an attack or even moving on the map. Anytime you enter a new room, it has to pause for a second, and it makes the game feel super slow by comparison. Battles become very irritating as some animations and actions take 20 to 30 seconds to complete, like Granny's lightning bolt. Aesthetically, Robopon's a big mess too. The colors and sprites are so poorly detailed and chosen, the music goes from being pretty solid to just awful and grating within seconds. The Robopon aren't even particularly interesting. I mean, look, we have a fucking sumo egg evolve into a big sumo robot. It's so basic that it's hard to care. Then you have this series of pointless minigames that are solely stat-based, but they still take forever. Like, sometimes someone can challenge you to a match of jumping or speed, where you just sit there and watch your little robot do its thing. Sometimes taking 40 seconds of watching. Like, why is this a thing? I could understand if we had any kind of input on this, but no, it's just forcing you to sit down and watch your little pet move. Maybe they were trying to force an emotional reaction from the player? Is this the moment where Robopon becomes something you love? No, instead it's just a completely shameless Pokemon ripoff. Literally nothing was added to the concept, like it had its soul sucked dry and given a new skin by a bunch of corporate execs. Instead, we should all look at Robopon's tagline. Build 'em, collect 'em, trash 'em. Yeah, trashing it sounds about right. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Arcadia for more content. And make sure you like and leave the comments and all that stuff if you want. But I want you guys to check out the other videos coming out today. My really talented friends here, First, Scrib, and Strex. We all have been working on this for so long. I really hope you guys dig the new look. Also, you can follow me on Twitter if you want to see things like this. I don't know why, but I do that. I'm sorry, and I will see you guys next time.